Leadership. This is my weekly series where I talk about leadership, tech, and much more. Thank you for joining me today, and let's have a conversation about what's going on with you. But first, before we do that, let's take a pause. If you're tuning in right now, I know there's a bunch of things probably going on for you. And the great thing is, you took the time and you're listening to this. So, first, let's close our eyes and breathe. This is the pause I want you to take and just be aware of what you're feeling. So just close your eyes and focus on your breathing. It's simply that you don't have to worry about what thoughts you're thinking about. You can focus on the voice, but more importantly, just focus on the breath and what you're feeling. And as you start feeling and start becoming aware of your mind, your body, notice what feelings come across. You don't have to, again, think about what they mean, but I just want you to take this pause because that's the topic we are going to talk about today. How pulling back and pausing is important to propelling yourself forward, to taking that leap. Because if you're joining in and if you follow me, I know you are an ambitious professional. You're looking to build out a successful career or a fulfilling work life. And sometimes we can get just in this habit of going along and just moving, almost feels like a hamster wheel. And it just feels easy, right? You're turning, you're going. And I feel, and I've been there, where it's easier to just keep going and not pause or not think about what all this means to you or what this means for your long term goals. Or maybe you haven't even thought about the long term goals. Think about this. If you are into exercising, there's often a plan for your exercise schedule. There's often rest days in between your exercise days. And that's for a reason. It's because your muscles need the time to recover so you can work out more. If you're lifting weights, you have to do 60 or 90 seconds between sets. If you don't give that rest between the sets, you're not going to be able to lift that weight for that many number of reps. Think about this. If you're a hiker, if you go for a walk or a run, you have to fuel yourself. Either it's through a rest, just to get a drink, or just to eat something, and then move forward. You cannot continue walking, especially if you're doing long distance hiking. This is why that rest is important because that is what is going to get you at the top. Another reason that rest is important because then when you pause, you're going to look around. You're not just looking, walking on the trail and have like this vision where you're either watching the ground so you don't stumble. When you pause and you stop, now you're going to lift your head up and you're going to look around. Now you'll see that whole environment with a different view, different perspective. And finally, this whole action of pulling back, very similar to the slingshot, right? If you pull back your slingshot, the further you pull it back, the faster that stone or ball goes, and the further it will go. And that is what I mean when I say it is important to pull back so that you can take that leap forward. Now, I know we are all very busy and there's a lot of work happening, especially when, there may not be as many people in your team or organization and the workload hasn't reduced. And I often hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm very busy. I don't have time for this. I don't even have time to come to you and think about what I want to talk to you about." And saying all this seems very normal, and see, it is an easy thing to do. And I can tell you from my own experience that I have done these things. I have been like, "Oh, I'm so busy." Anytime you meet somebody at a park or a game or a party, and it's like, "Oh, how's everything going?" "Oh, it's very busy." That is your standard line, and it just makes us somehow feel like we are important in this world if we are busy, right? Which is partly there's nothing wrong with it, but you also want to understand how is that busyness affecting your work, your life. And it generally takes less energy to continue to go. You know how they talk about like a body in motion stays in motion unless you have a force, external force applied to it. It's sort of like that. And sometimes there will be an external force that will apply it and that will stop you in your tracks. And then you will start thinking more intentionally. But the great thing about being human is that we have a mind of our own. And if we can train that mind to apply the internal force so that we are not just continuing to be in motion mindlessly, but are picking how we want to move about the world with intention. So let's talk about what happens if you don't do that, because a lot of us are doing so. Again, it feels very much normalized. But this is what can lead to a burnout, for example. You're continuously working, you're not getting time to think about how this all fits into the big picture. And eventually, your mind will burn out. Just like your muscles might give up if you're working out with no rest in between the sets. Very similar to that. You may feel demotivated, like you're no longer excited by the work because it just feels mundane. Or it just feels like somebody's telling you, here's the things to do, you're doing them, you're not seeing any positive feedback come through. And slowly, the quality of your work will diminish and it will feed into this vicious cycle and you'll feel demotivated. Right? Going back to the whole lifting weights example, if you have no rest, you can lift a few more weights, but then you will not be able to pull yourself. So if you're trying to do these, uh, press, barbell press or whatever it's called, if you put now, you may not be able to extend all the way up, and you're going to stop here instead of going all the way up, right? That means the quality is getting lower. Eventually, it's like, oh, let me switch out the weights and go to a lighter weight. See, now I'm going to try it with the lighter weight. Right? Now you're demotivated. That can lead to other things as well. Right? But the other thing is you get stuck into this tactical mindset because some of the things that come easily without having to think about are some of these tasks or tactical actions that just need to take place, and we don't put things together. We don't think, how is this one task another task leading to what is going to come, what is my vision for my career, my goals, my life. So in order for us not to be surprised when an external force stops us in our track, or to not having to get totally burnt out and see a very negative effect, we want to become more mindful of this. So, today I wanted to share some actionable strategies and tips around how you can pause and pull back, how you can reflect on what you're doing in order for you to open up to the possibilities that are in front of you. Because only when we reflect can we grow as individuals. And that growth can be a personal growth or it can be a professional growth. And this is another thing. When we are very busy, we don't put time into personal or professional development or growth. And to me, that is one of the most detrimental negative effects of being stuck in this hamster wheel. So, one of the first things that I feel and I want to let you know is that give yourself the gift of time. What I mean by that is have a set time aside to reflect on how things are going for you and maybe strategize, but we'll come to that part in a little bit. The first important thing is to reflect. A few ways you can do this is every day set aside maybe 15 minutes towards the end of your work day to take that time, maybe jot down how the day went, what went well, what maybe didn't go as well and can be improved, or what did you not get to that you would like to get to in the next day. This is really important to set aside that time, maybe block your calendar, because again, it doesn't need to be an activity that you have to think about a lot, because if you're going to start thinking about it, it's eventually going to slip away from you. So just put it on your calendar and then adhere to that time block, and do it in a way where it doesn't interfere with your other meetings or your obligations at home or work. It can be 5 p.m., 6 p.m., it can be 9:30 p.m. at night, whatever it is, and jot that down. You can also do this. So, if the daily 15-minute is one option, the other option is to set aside about 30 minutes on a Friday evening before you wrap up the work and before you're getting ready for the weekend. It's almost like putting your notes down and then sort of having a closure on the week. And then that sets you off into the weekend where you can take a break, where you can try and disconnect. So do this. And again, the same thing on those 30 minutes. How did my week go? What are the things I accomplished? What could have gone better? How does this line up with what I want to do in a month, in half a year, in a year, in 3 years? Could be any of those things. But try and connect what happened to where you might be going. That can also be helpful because then it helps you understand, am I doing these things and are they conducive to my long term goals? So that's one way where that reflection activity can really be helpful. Another thing that you can do, and that this can be a little bit unstructured compared to the first suggestion, is just journal, just reflect and note things down and let whatever you're feeling flow out on paper. If you do this on paper, that's really good, because I think the action of writing is very feels very different than typing it out on a laptop or putting it out in a phone. So use a pen and paper. We have to go old school here. You can definitely use technology. I know there are certain devices now which have a very pen and paper like feeling, but they make it, they convert the notes into a digital version. So you can do that. And if you use that, hey, tell me how that is. But just journaling things out and letting it flow in an unstructured way just gets a lot of the feelings out of your mind and onto the paper. And sometimes that can lead to certain discovery, certain feelings, or it can just give you some ideas. And that's why I feel like having a structure around this particular journaling may or may not work, depends on how you get your best ideas. That creative process can be very helpful. So make sure you try that out. Some people also do it in the morning, the first thing, and that helps them sort of get everything that might be, bothering you out, and then you're starting fresh. So it's a way of cleansing your mind out. The third thing I want to tell you is that articulate what you're feeling or what you're thinking about to somebody. This person can be a friend, a spouse, a colleague, or a mentor, a coach. It can be any one of these people. But the reason to articulate it is that it becomes a little bit more real And when you hear yourself say those things, it has a different effect on you versus just writing it down or just thinking it in your mind. So, for example, if you're just thinking about, oh, here's how what I did and how it would align with my long term goals, you might write it down, you might think about it, but I can guarantee you that if you say it to somebody and you discuss it, it will feel different when you start voicing that out. And that again is really powerful because when you articulate now, you uh, start figuring out, am I thinking about this the right way? You maybe tweak it, you iterate on what you're trying to say, and you really nail down what you're feeling. It also makes it a little bit more real. The other thing it can do, it can give you an accountability partner. If you talk to, if you say, okay, let's, maybe you have a partner, maybe it's another person, and they are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to build a habit of pausing and pulling back, and you can help each other out. And so now you're both becoming buddies and holding each other accountable to doing this. So find yourself a buddy in this case, just like you have an exercise buddy, right? You can really benefit from having somebody to talk to. Finally, think about being strategic and thinking about the long term. And I will say that this is difficult to do for those reasons that when we are busy, just getting into the tactics can just feel very easy. Also, checking things off a list feels very fulfilling. And when you're thinking about long term, you can't really check things off immediately. But it's important to start from what is it, my 3 year vision or 5 year, or where do I see myself from 10 years? And again, the idea is not to bind yourself to that vision so tightly that you don't give yourself flexibility and room for creativity. But at least starting from the long term then helps you, okay, what are my milestones along the way? Then you can break down that vision into smaller milestones. And then it will help you, again, create strategies or tactics to get to those individual milestones. But now you know that these tactics and milestones are in service of your long term vision. They are not just pit stops or random pit stops. You're following that trail. You're not just taking any path that you see come along. And becoming intentional about where you want to go is really important because that means you will go there faster. Because now you've figured out what is that I need to do. How do I, you're planning it out. And you can sometimes take detours along the way. That is not a no no, but at least generally you have that idea. And then sometimes along the way you will discover that that vision is slightly evolving. And here's why I'm saying it's going to evolve, not change, not become something totally different. It evolves because now, as you have traveled along that path, you have more information, you are learning new things, and that will help you evolve your future milestones, but also your goals. And that's a good thing. And that's why I said you need to have the vision, have goals, but also have flexibility around it. So I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear thoughts on how you have paused, how you have strategically pulled back to really propel yourself forward. For me, after 20 years, when I left my job last year, taking some time off to think about what I wanted to do, experimenting with a couple of different things, really helped me think about what is the long term thing I want to do next. Where do I see myself going? And what do I need in order to get there? What skills do I need to build? What experiences do I need to have? And what are my strengths and how can I amplify those in order to make the most impact for myself and the people around me. And so if you're in a similar position and I would love to talk to you about it if you're open to chatting with somebody. Again, I can be that accountability partner to you. So take a moment, take a pause, and think about your day, your week, your month. I'm Priyanka Shinde. Thank you for joining the series of Unleash Your Leadership. I will see you next week. Can't wait to reconnect with you on another topic and would love to hear from you. If you like what you're hearing, please feel free to share with your friends, your networks, and send me your comments and suggestions. I would love to hear from you. Have a great day. Bye.